You walk into the kitchen with total certainty. You needed something. Something specific. You could feel the purpose of the trip as you stood up, as you moved through the hallway, as you pushed open the door. And then, nothing. A blank. You stand there, staring at the refrigerator like it owes you an answer, and you have absolutely no idea why you came. This happens to you. It happens to almost every person alive. And for years, most people quietly assumed it meant something was wrong with them. A sign of aging. A lapse in focus. A small personal failure. But that explanation is completely wrong. What actually happens inside your brain the moment you cross that doorway is one of the strangest and most revealing things neuroscience has uncovered in the last 2 decades. It says something profound about how your memory actually works, not how you think it works, how it actually works. And once you understand it, you will never look at a doorway the same way again. Your memory is not a filing cabinet. That is the first thing to get straight. You probably imagine it as something like a hard drive. Information goes in, gets stored, gets retrieved when you need it. Clean, linear, reliable. That model feels intuitive because it is simple. But it is almost entirely false. Your memory is situational. It is environmental. It is, in a very real sense, geographical. Your brain does not store memories as isolated facts floating in neutral space. It stores them bundled together with the context in which they were formed. The sights, the sounds, the smells, your physical position, the emotional state you were in, the room you were standing in. All of it gets compressed together into a single package. A memory is not a file, it is a scene. This is why the smell of a specific food can pull you back 20 years in an instant. This is why a song you haven't heard since high school immediately rebuilds the specific hallway you walked through when you first heard it. The memory and the context are not separate, they are fused. Psychologists call this context-dependent memory. It has been studied rigorously for decades. In one of the most striking demonstrations of this effect, researchers Duncan Godin and Alan Baddeley asked scuba divers to memorize a list of words. Half the divers memorized the list underwater, half memorized it on land. When they were later tested, the divers who had learned the words underwater recalled them dramatically better when they were back underwater. The divers who learned on land recalled better on land. The environment was not just a backdrop. It was part of the memory itself. Your brain does this automatically, constantly, without asking your permission. Every experience you have gets tagged with where it happened. The location is not decoration. The location is data. So now think about what happens when you stand up from your couch. You have a thought. A clear, purposeful thought. Maybe you realize you need your phone charger, or you want to grab a pen, or you remembered a bill you need to check on. That thought was born in a specific context. In that room, in that chair, in that moment, it was tagged automatically, invisibly, with everything around you at that second. The light in the room, the sound of the television, the cushion beneath you. The thought and the context formed together as one unit. And then you walk through a doorway. In 2011, psychologist Gabriel Radvansky at the University of Notre Dame published research that gave this phenomenon its name and its mechanism. He called it the doorway effect. Radvansky and his colleagues ran a series of experiments, both in physical rooms and in virtual environments, asking participants to carry out tasks involving objects and then move through spaces. What they found was consistent and striking. Passing through a doorway, just the act of crossing from one room into another, significantly increased the chance of forgetting what the participant had intended to do. Walking the same physical distance within one room produced no such forgetting. The doorway itself was doing something. What Radvansky concluded was that your brain treats doorways as event boundaries. Your mind is constantly segmenting your experience into chapters. A room is a chapter. When you cross into a new room, your brain automatically closes the previous chapter and opens a new one. It does this to keep your mental model of the world organized. It is an act of cognitive housekeeping. The brain says, that scene is over. This is a new scene. Let me update my model of where I am and what I am dealing with. The thought you had on the couch was stored in the previous chapter. When the new chapter opens, that context gets filed away. Not deleted, filed. Pushed below the surface to make room for the present moment. You did not forget. your brain archived. And your access to that archived thought is now gated behind the context you left behind. This is not a flaw. This is a feature, a very old feature. Consider the environment your brain was built for. Your ancestors were not navigating apartments and office buildings. They were moving through open landscapes, through forests, across rivers, into caves. Their world was divided not by walls, but by environmental changes. The edge of a tree line, the bank of a river, the entrance to a shelter. Each of these transitions was meaningful. Crossing into a new environment meant new threats, new information, new demands on attention. The brain that could rapidly update its situational model, closing out the last environment and building a fresh model of the new one, was the brain that survived. The doorway effect is that survival mechanism running in an environment it was never designed for. Your prefrontal cortex and hippocampus are doing exactly what they evolved to do. They are treating the kitchen doorway the way your great-great-great and many more greats-grandparents' brains treated the edge of the forest. The context has shifted. Reset. Rebuild. Focus on now. The reason this feels like forgetting is because, in your modern life, the thought you formed on the couch was important. You needed to act on it. But your brain did not know that. It simply processed the doorway the way it always does. Automatically. Efficiently. Without sentiment. Here is the counterintuitive part, the thing that makes this genuinely strange. Going back to where you had the thought actually works. Radvansky's research confirmed this too. When participants returned to the room where they had originally formed an intention or encountered an object, their recall improved significantly. The act of re-entering the original context reopened the chapter. The environmental tags associated with the memory became active again. The thought resurfaced, sometimes immediately, sometimes within seconds, as if it had been waiting just behind a door of its own. You have almost certainly experienced this without knowing the mechanism. You walk back to the couch, you sit down, and suddenly, without effort, you remember. You did not think harder. You did not concentrate. You simply returned to the context. The brain did the rest. Neuroscientist Howard Eichenbaum, who spent decades mapping the hippocampus and its role in episodic memory, described the hippocampus as a cognitive mapmaker, not just of physical space, but of the relational structure of experiences. The hippocampus is not storing facts. It is storing the architecture of moments, where things happened, what came before, what the environment felt like. Memory, in the hippocampal model, is inseparable from place. This is why patients with hippocampal damage famously lose the ability to form new memories, but often retain memories from before the damage. The map-making machine broke. The old maps survived. New ones cannot be drawn. Your perfectly healthy brain is doing something parallel every time you cross a threshold. It is drawing a new map, storing the old one, preparing you for whatever this new space demands. It is not interested in the pen you needed. It is interested in your survival and situational awareness. The pen is not a survival priority. The new room is. There is something almost philosophical in that. Your brain is built for presence. It wants you fully oriented to wherever you are right now. The moment you step into a new space, it hands you over to the present completely. Whatever pulled you here, that lives in the past room, with its own context, its own chapter. You walk into rooms all day. Into kitchens, into offices, into bathrooms, into stores. Every threshold is a small reset. Most of the time you never notice it, because the thought you carried was strong enough, or the task was familiar enough, or the walk was short enough that the event boundary did not fully close before you arrived. But on the days when the intention was soft, formed in a moment of distraction, held loosely in the mind, those are the days the doorway wins. The fix, if you want one, is simple and strange at the same time. Form the intention loudly. Say it out loud as you stand up. Say it again as you walk. Keep the context alive, actively, verbally, so that it travels with you instead of staying behind in the room where it was born. You are essentially refusing to let the chapter close until you have done what you came to do. Or just go back to where you were. Stand in the doorway. Take one step back. Let the room rebuild around you. Let the context reassemble, and watch the thought float back up from wherever it went, intact, clear, waiting for you. Tonight you will walk into a room and stop. Blank. Staring. And you will know, for the first time, exactly what is happening. Your brain is not failing you. It is doing something ancient and automatic and surprisingly elegant. It is closing the last chapter. It is opening a new one. The kitchen never knew why you came, but the couch does.